Welcome back to Deviant Off Script, our conversation series. I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about today's guest, a gentleman by the name of Clark Fredericks. And Clark has an amazing story. And I want to tell you kind of up front, for a number of reasons, this is a really hard conversation. Clark has been through a lot. He has dealt with a lot, and it's a tough listen in a lot of places, this conversation. But it's also an important listen because we don't often get to have conversations with people who really know how to express the level of difficulty and problems that abuse as a child can lead to. And Clark is uniquely positioned to talk about that. He was sexually abused and abused in a number of different ways as a kid. But what he does is he talks about that with a lot of candor and with a lot of frank honesty. And he's got a new book out called Scarred, which really tells his story from start to finish. Because obviously, as you might imagine, that abuse leads to a lot of problems as an adult: substance abuse, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, etc. But also, I'll tell you up front, Clark also spent time in prison because what he did was during his adult life, he reckoned with that abuse and he killed his abuser. And he talks about that in this conversation. So with that said, here's Clark Fredericks, the author of Scarred. He is a motivational speaker, and he has an amazing story of resilience, of survival. Here he is, Clark Fredericks. I know that, there is obviously some time and distance between you and what you went through. But with that said, I know that talking about this stuff is never easy, and I appreciate your willingness to chat about it with us, your story, your book with candor and detail. So thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure. I'm an open book. For so many years, I was stuck in silence, and that's what really destroyed me, is not being able to talk about what happened. So I talk freely now.
Yeah. And you went through hell essentially for years at the hands of a sexual abuser. I just want to start in the beginning. And I've heard people who are victims of child sexual assault talk about this as adults before. And the thing that is always striking to me is when people talk about what they went through is the element of loneliness. And you really outline that in your book pretty well about when you had these experiences, when you were abused, while this was happening, just the empty loneliness that goes on. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this happened back in the 70s, and there was no internet. Priests were still exalted back then, to talk bad about a priest, talk bad about a doctor or a police officer, a teacher, or in my case, a Boy Scout leader. It was unheard of. Kids were meant to be seen, not heard, was the motto back then. And so when this happens, there were no agencies to go to, like social services back then. The only ones to go to were the police, and this guy was a lieutenant in the sheriff's department. So that avenue was cut off for me. So you just feel completely stuck, helpless. He destroyed my boundaries and destroyed my trust. And he threatened me with physical harm if I did speak to anyone, especially my parents. So you just feel stuck. It's a horrible situation. And then you couple on the shame. The shame is just you just think, especially as you get older and you look back and you just think, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I speak up? And it's just the shame compounds. And, the fact of the matter is only 1 out of 10 children speak up when something happens like this. The other 9 of us remain silent. And I remained silent, and I just felt alone in the world. I had been an altar boy in the Episcopal Church, and I expected God to strike this monster down, and that didn't happen. So I didn't know where God was. I just felt alone with this evil entity who was doing perverted things to me.
Can you talk about the first time Dennis Pegg entered your life and when he sort of became a figure in your childhood?
My earliest recollection, I had an older brother who was 6 years older than me, and he was in the Boy Scouts ahead of me. And Dennis, and my next door neighbor, was like a brother to me. And he was 6 years older, and he and my brother were best friends, and they're both in the Scouts together. And Dennis Pegg, their scoutmaster, befriends our family from my brother's involvement. So my youngest recollection, 5 years old, 6 years old, he was always, coming over, stopping by our house. That's predators have to win over the families. And then they win over the communities. And so that nobody suspects them. They hide in plain sight. So from early on, he was always at our house. He spent holidays with us. My parents owned a restaurant back then, and my father put on Sunday night dinners, big Sunday night dinners. He was always coming over to our house for Sunday night dinner. We had a lot of hunting land. And we liked to hunt. He liked to hunt. He would hunt with us, not with me at 5 years old, but he would hunt with my older brother, with my father on our property. He was always there.
Yeah. What you're describing is sort of, in all the years of kind of researching and covering in the news stories that involve people like Dennis Pegg, what you're describing is an incredibly familiar refrain, right? Is like, it's the friend of the family that's over all the time. And you're right. They hide in plain sight. It's almost sort of like a myth. The guy that's like down the street that nobody knows what he's doing down there. Like, that's not how they operate, right?
No, back then, your parents harped on and ingrained in you stranger danger. That was the popular term back then. It's stranger danger just never happened. They warned me to never get into a stranger's car. They didn't warn me not to get into my brother's scoutmaster and their good friend Dennis Pegg's truck. They never said that. Yeah.
Can you talk to me about the first time that Dennis Pegg abused you and sort of your understanding? Because what's always striking to me is when I hear people talk about these experiences, and I don't want to minimize it by calling it an experience. It was you were a victim, obviously, of horrific abuse. But the thing that's always fascinating to me is that children know right and wrong. They have an understanding of what is not right. And can you talk a little bit about the first time that you were victimized and understanding this is not right, this is wrong?
The very first time he initiated physical touch was after I had open heart surgery at age 6. I was born with a hole in my heart. The doctors monitored me to age 6, and they said, we have to operate in the next 6 months. And I had open heart surgery in 1971 at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City. And I have keloid condition where my scars are raised up. And my parents were so proud of me for surviving this surgery. They used to have me raise their shirt to all their friends and collect a quarter from everybody, and everybody would clap. One of their friends was Dennis Pegg. And the first time, this was about 3 or 4 months after my surgery, and that summer, I got operated on in April of 71. And this was June, July. He came over to the house. I had just come inside for a drink, and I put on the TV in our den. The front door was right by the den, and there's a boom, boom, boom knock, and I hear Dennis's voice, and I bound up off the chair. I loved Dennis. He was a lieutenant. He wore a badge, carried a gun. And I let him in, and we sat down in the den. He asked where everybody was. I said, in the backyard. And he said, let me give you a quarter, to see your scars. I'm like, sure. And then he's like, I've never seen a scar so raised up like yours. How about $1 if you let me touch it? I'm 6 years old. I just had a life or death surgery. I trust this guy next to my father the most. I'm like, sure.
Right.
And he's my scar. So I thought nothing of it. I didn't know he had plans down the road that, and this was just it's part of the grooming process, So I didn't think anything of that first touch. later on in life, when you look back at everything, you're like, oh, that scumbag.
Yeah.
He started like something that represented life or death surgery for me. He like perverted into his first act of grooming.
Yeah. I want to talk about grooming for a minute. I think that, we hear that word a lot in the news and in sort of the zeitgeist of these kinds of things, right? And I'm curious if you can talk about, from your perspective, what the grooming process is and how that works for someone like you that went through such horrific abuse. Just kind of give us some perspective on that.
Yeah, like I don't know how these predator pedophiles back in the day all had the same playbook. It's like I could see now with the internet, but how back then it was every single one of them. First, you have to win over the family. You have to win over the community. You have to initiate touch at some point. So like a tussle of the hair to the normal person is just like, tussling little Bobby's hair. To a pedophile, that's like, I gotta get him used to me touching him, tussling of the hair. Then it goes to pat of the knee, telling a joke and patting the knee and laughing. And then it's slapping the thigh up higher. They initiate pornography or talk about sex, drugs and alcohol. This guy was giving me beer at 9 years old down at our lake community, calling me into his pickup truck. A lieutenant in the sheriff's department is calling a 9-year-old into his truck to have a beer with him. I think people, if they think of the devil or evil, it's the red-faced guy with horns and a pitchfork and a long tail. No, that's not what the devil looks like. The devil looks like the guy next door who's kind and compassionate and funny and loving, who's hiding behind that so he can hunt children and abuse them. That's true evil. And that's what this guy was.
I mean, it doesn't take a psychologist to know that what you went through was going to have lasting effects on you. What were some of the first indicators that the abuse, after it was over, what were the first indicators that abuse was having some effect on your behavior and the way you were going about the world?
Oh, man, it started early on, like lighting fires.
Yeah.
I was a little firebug. I lit the corner of our house on fire. I lit our backyard on fire. I would just pour gasoline all over the garage floor and light it on fire. I would make designs in the driveway with gas and light it on fire. Shoplifting, stealing cigars. Got caught stealing cigars in 7th grade. So like there was signs. And I didn't equate fire or shoplifting to abuse. As we go through the story, we'll hear that I land in prison. And my therapist in prison in a group therapy class, says, how many of you ever played with fire? Every hand went up. She's like, how many of you shoplifted? Every hand went up.
I mean, your story is it's unbelievable, honestly, for a number of different reasons. As you got older, this abuse obviously was what pushed you into sort of the fast and loose lifestyle of gambling and alcohol and all of the things that you were getting involved in. Did you know that all of that was a result of the abuse?
I had a therapist ask me, Clark, back in your 20s and 30s, did you fixate on Dennis Pegg and the abuse at all? Like, was that in the forefront of your mind? Was it a driving force? And I had to think, and I'm like, no, not at all. And she said, that's normal. She's like, people will concentrate on their careers, concentrate on starting a family, concentrate on partying, women, drugs, alcohol, gambling. And they're not thinking about it. It's not till later on in life where those things that you're using to distract your mind no longer work. And that's where you have a day of reckoning and the cards come crumbling down. So no, the answer is no. Like, my wheels are spinning in life and I'm just equating it to I'm a wild, crazy dude. That's just who I am. I'm not equating being a womanizer to what happened. It's just like I had these insecurities from what happened, and my mind said if we sleep with enough people, we'll feel like a man, we'll feel macho, we'll feel tough. So my 20s were just a blur of one night stands and short little 1 month, 3 month relationships.
I want to move now to when you made the decision. Can you talk to me about confronting Dennis Pegg and everything that happened that night? I was just reading the encounter in your book. It's unreal, but I'd like for you to sort of walk me through the thought process and the lead up and then everything that happened that night.
Well, I'm in my 40s now, not today, but when this happened, and my life is just going nowhere. I'm abusing drugs and alcohol. I went into my 40s and something I didn't know I suffered from PTSD, or childhood sexual abuse victims suffered from PTSD, and something triggered PTSD. I fell into a deep depression. I had zero coping skills. So just to try to get out of bed and get going in the morning was like climbing Mount Everest every day. It was exhausting. I'm physically, mentally, spiritually bankrupt. So I'm like, let me have a cocktail before work. Yeah, so I'm going to work with a mug full of alcohol, doing some bumps of coke to get me through the day. I had injured my back. I was working with my brother we had a 2-tire automotive centers, and we would work on backhoe tires, loader tires, truck tires. And I went to a doctor. He prescribed me Vicodin. Instantly, fell in love with those things. And when he wouldn't give me any more, I just went on the street and started finding them. So, I'm living this way for a couple of years. Pain pills, some coke, some alcohol, just trying to get through each day, depressed, miserable. And couple of years of that, and after work on a Saturday, I'm getting a coffee, and in walks my abuser, Dennis Pegg. And he sees me, yells out to me, hey, Clark. And my heart starts pounding, my mind's swirling, getting fuzzy, my breathing. It's hard to breathe. I'm getting clammy, sweating. And I hear a young boy by his side call him the same nickname he used to make me call him. Oh. And that instantly just ripped open all my stuff. I'm like, this MFer is still abusing boys 30 years later. I can't believe it. And I had to get out of there when he would touch me, I would freeze. And as you get older, that part drives you nuts, that you froze. It's a bodily response to fear. I would freeze. And I felt myself freezing at the coffee island. And before he could make his way over to give me a pat on the back or hug me, I ran out. We bumped shoulders. He's like, where are you going? And I hopped in my truck. I sped out of there. And my life just fell apart after that. I walked out of the family business I was in with my brother after a month. I just couldn't. I drinking my drink on the way to work and doing my couple bumps and taking my pain pills weren't getting me through the day with all my trauma ripped open. And I walked out. Oh, man. Over the next several months, I just spiraled into drugs and alcohol. With free time on my hands, I'm just buying tons of coke, doing cocaine around the clock, drinking like a fish, not caring if I lived or died. I talked to you about boundaries a little while ago. When my pain pills ran low and I went to somebody who I got pain pills from, and they said, I don't have any pain pills, bro. Why are you even messing with those things? You might as well just do some packets of dope. And the guy's like, and don't think you're better than me, because you're doing pain pills. It's pharmaceutical heroin. You're doing the same thing as me. He's like, so just get that through your head, and I can give you a $5 packet of heroin right now. And I was just like, fine, let's do it. One of those things I swore to myself, Andrew, was I will never, ever, ever, ever do heroin.
Yeah.
And now I'm doing heroin. Just no boundary meant anything to me. I couldn't live within boundaries. So, living this way for a couple more months, and it's just on my mind every day. He's abusing boys still. He's abusing boys still. He's abusing boys still.
Yeah.
And it just ate at me and ate at me and ate at me. And I just, I got to the point where it was time to go confront him. And drove to his house, not knowing if he even lived there anymore. I figured if he's still in the area, he probably does. Parked halfway down his driveway. He had a long driveway, and went up to his house. It's a June night. It's warm out. His front door's open, his screen door's shut, and there he is sitting in his living room watching TV. And it was just like the devil sitting in his lair. I just looked in, all I just saw was the devil sitting in his lair. And before I froze out in his driveway, I marched up to the door and I ripped it open. And, this is the part, people can say, what were your intentions when you went to his house? Like, it's not like I said, I'm going to drive to his house and do ABC. It was basically a death mission. This guy was still the firearms instructor for the police in 2 counties, Morris and Sussex. Everybody in law enforcement has to get recertified with their handgun every year.
Yeah.
And they would have to go to him. He was the instructor for it. It would turn out he had 36 firearms in his house. He had a dozen knives. He had swords. You name it. And if you've been abusing children for 45 years, wouldn't you have a gun, like a holster under every table, taped to every couch? Right. Like you got to know at some point, somebody's going to come back for you. So I just thought, this is a death mission, whatever. I took a knife with me, a knife against 36 handguns, though, and shotguns. I didn't care, though. I was broken. I was beaten down, and I just couldn't take another night knowing that he was still raping children. And I'm standing.
I mean, you were willing to die, it sounds like.
Yeah. There were so many close calls with the drugs.
Yeah.
Like in the middle of the night, just doing so much coke and then popping Xanax and pain pills and not remembering how many Xanax I took, and my heart's beating out of my chest, and I'm guzzling a bottle of vodka for going through the letters of the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Yeah.
It's just and wondering, if I close my eyes, am I ever going to wake up? I can't tell you how many nights were like that.
Right.
And so it's just I wasn't trying to die, but I didn't care if I lived or died. There's a difference, where you're actively trying to commit suicide or you just don't care anymore. And I just didn't care anymore. I was broken. I was completely, utterly broken. And I went to his house with a guy who's the firearms instructor for 2 counties worth of law enforcement officers, knowing he had tons of guns. He had tons of guns back when I was a kid at his house, and he would show you all his guns. And I'm standing in his doorway after ripping it open, and you would think, all right, here's a childhood rape victim of mine standing in my doorway at 9:30 at night. You would think he would get on his hands and knees and just start pleading with you, praying to you. I'm so sorry. I'm sick. I know why you're here. I'm evil. I did horrible things. I can't believe what I've done. Please forgive. Nothing. No forgiveness asked. Just he calmly looks over his shoulder. He's like, hey, how are you? And it seemed like the most bizarre thing in the world to say. And I just said, hey, how am I, MFer? Let me show you how to F I am. And I raced across his living room. He got up. He started punching me. I started slicing at him, stabbing him. He's punching me, stabbing him. 2-3 minutes of this fight. At one point, he slugged me. I was falling down. I grabbed his shirt and I brought the knife down. I put the knife right through my hand. Fight went on for another minute or two. He fell down in a mix of both of our bloods. He's up against his wall, and I just leaned down in front of him and looked him eye to eye, and I said, "It's not so fun raping little boys now, is it, Dennis?" And I slit his throat. And that was it, man.
Did he say anything before you did that?
No. The whole attack, the whole fight, there was not one word uttered by him other than like a high-pitched squeal.
Yeah.
Like, that's all that came out of his voice. He didn't say, "Clark, stop, let's talk." There was not a single word, just a high-pitched squeal throughout that. That was it. And to answer what could be your next question, because it's always everybody's next question, is like, how did you feel afterwards? Did this take all your pain away? Did it solve all your problems? The answer is absolutely not.
Yeah.
How did I feel immediately afterwards? I felt like I just flushed my life down the toilet. I knew I was screwed. Like, I got a severe wound that's gushing blood. And it's not like I could just walk into a hospital and be like, I put a hunting knife through my hand and like they'll stitch me up and send me on my way. I knew that would be my downfall. And to kill someone, even though you're killing a predator, you're killing a pedophile, you're killing the devil, it's ugly, it's brutal, it hurts your soul, it's not healthy, it's not therapeutic to go kill somebody. And I tell everybody, like, every victim wants to do what I did. Male, female, Democrat, Republican, they reach out to me. They're like, "You did exactly what I've dreamt of doing my entire life." Because what is done to us is so horrific at such a young age, our minds can only think to even the score by killing them.
Yeah.
But it doesn't fix us. You don't heal from trauma by adding more trauma.
And it's another layer that the abuser has manifested on you, which is they have filled you with contempt and hate. Like that's another layer that they have inflicted on you that you otherwise wouldn't have had if they hadn't have come along.
Correct. 1000% correct. And they're winning. If you go kill your abuser and you get a life sentence, you're not going to get a sentence like I got. You go get a life sentence. I can't tell you how hellish prison is. It's not life. It's just hell. You want to take your already damaged life and then just go right into hell for the remainder of your years. Like, really? Yeah. So they win. Like, even if you kill them and you're doing life, they're winning. They're still in control of you. They're controlling your actions and making you do life in prison. And I tell everybody, the sinful part is to allow your abuser to still have control of you decades later. Yeah. Like, what I did was because Dennis Pegg still had control of me because I never healed. I never grew. I was still a damaged little 12-year-old boy in the body of an adult now.
Yeah.
And never healed. I had no growth in life.
When I was reading your book, one of the striking images to me was after you killed him, when you described going to his bedroom. Can you talk to me? Can you paint that picture for me?
Yeah, when I was arrested, the lieutenant of the state police, Mr. Howie Ryan, he was in charge of the CSI team that went to Pegg's house to gather all the evidence. And he came into my holding cell at the state police barracks. And for whatever reason, I decided to trust this guy. He started off our conversation by apologizing to me for having never stopped Pegg, that he heard rumors for years about him and young boys, but he had no victims, and he can't just go arrest somebody on rumors.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he's like, "Can I ask you one thing?" And I'm like, "What's that?" And he's like, "There was your bloody footprints." He goes, "The whole scene was contained in his living room. Nothing was touched in the house. Nothing was taken. It was just the living room. But there was bloody footprints that went to one of the bedrooms. He's like, why did you walk to the bedroom? He's like, that part's baffling me. And I said, that's the bedroom where he raped me. And I walked to the bedroom and I spit on the bed and then I walked out. And he's like, wow. He goes, all right, I get it. And I said, is that going to go into your report? And he said, not at all. Whatever you and I are talking about is between us. He goes, I got your blood all over his house. He goes, I'm not adding anything else to incriminate you any further. And he even came back into the holding cell. And we may be getting ahead, but we're at this point right now. He came back in the holding cell and he said, Clark, I need you to listen to me. This is very important. He goes, I have you 6 ways to Sunday. It doesn't mean your life is over though, bro. He goes, but my detectives and detectives from the prosecutor's office are waiting in an interrogation room, and they're going to take you in there in a minute to interrogate you. He goes, if you go in there and open up your mouth, he goes, you could ruin the whole rest of your life. He goes, I'm telling you to go in there, request a lawyer, exercise your Fifth Amendment rights, and don't say a word. And he asked me that a couple times if I understood. And I'm like, I got it, man. And I went into that interrogation room. I said I refused to speak without a lawyer, and that was the end of it. You know, so he saved me there.
How are you doing now? You know, you've obviously written a book, and you talk about this a lot, and go give talks to people about this. But like, that doesn't mean you are healed, or does it? I mean, my question is like, how do you have been through so much and dealt with so much? Like, how do you go through your life now dealing with all of that?
Yeah, my life is, 2 people died when I killed Peg and my old life. I could never, the anniversary of his death is June 13th. I don't use his death as an anniversary. I use that as my sober date. So I'll be 13 years sober in 2 days. So healing was getting clean and sober. Healing was confronting my pain. And when you can't talk about your pain is still in control of you. When you can talk about it, you are now in control of your pain. It's a big 180 switch. I can talk about it now. I'm in control of it. It doesn't grip me in silence anymore. So from the time I got out of prison, I became an advocate in New Jersey for overturning the statute of limitations law for when childhood abuse victims could sue their abuser or sue the organization that employed their abuser. The old law, you had from 2 years from age 18 to 20 to file a lawsuit. No 12-year-old kid who was just raped is going to come forward at 18 to file a lawsuit. It's just simply not going to happen. So we got the law raised all the way up to age 55. So the stats we had is that childhood abuse victims usually don't talk about their abuse until age 48 to 52. So that's a lot of decades of self-destruction, but it could also be a lot of decades to heal from it. So we got the law passed to go up to age 55 now. So it gives you plenty of time to heal before you have to, come forward, and you could hold these people accountable. So I did that. I worked as an advocate, and we got the new law passed. I started a podcast called Free Like Me, and guests come on, speak their truth, and leave free like me. You can't heal from something you can't talk about. How can you heal from it? So, I invite guests on to share whatever story in life they have, whatever trauma they have, and to heal from it. I coach people online. I'm an online coach. I've written a book. I've done a documentary. And I help people. I just help them by speaking out. They see a guy who went through horrors and who sunk to a low. Like, I was held for murder one, life in prison, in the very jail where he worked his entire career as a lieutenant. How can you sink much lower than that? The guy I murdered was a lieutenant in the jail I'm now housed in.
Yeah.
And I was able to overcome that. I was able to get out from under it. I was able to get out from under a murder one charge, which is 30 to life. And I took a plea to second-degree manslaughter. Enough other victims came forward that they offered me a plea deal. And the judge gave me the minimum and apologized for sending me to prison for a single day. Yeah. So we have scars which are with us for the rest of our life, but it doesn't mean your life is forfeited in any way. And that's what I try to tell people who reach out to me and say, I want to do what you did. I'm like, look, your life isn't forfeited because you experienced abuse. If you go murder your abuser, your life is forfeited. And it's because of your own actions. So you got to get people to be accountable for their actions and accept what happened in the past. You know, when you can't accept it, when you're not accountable, you just remain a victim. And I try to get people like just to get over that victim mentality.
Clark, I said it at the top and I'll say it now here at the bottom. I cannot thank you enough for your candor and your honesty. And I think you are to be commended for what your message to people about dealing and healing and to outrun their trauma, because I don't think you can outrun trauma. So thank you so much for being with us. The book is called Scarred and it is out in July, correct?
Yeah, I take you through the grooming process. I take you through the trauma, through the self-destruction. It's all to get people to avoid my path. I did everything wrong. I'm not trying to say I did everything right. I did everything wrong. And then the book shows you can heal from it. I take you through the steps of my healing. And then you got to find a way to give back, because that's when you really take your healing to the next level, is when you're helping other people. And that's what I've dedicated the rest of my life to, is to helping people.
Clark Fredericks, I thank you so much, and best of luck to you going forward, sir.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me on, bro.